Hello there, Internet! Today, we're going to be talking about magic, and trading cards, and how to use magic in order to make some trading cards. If you've ever watched Yu-Gi-Oh!, you probably know that the show's famous trading card game, Duel Monsters, is derived from the mystical shadow games played in ancient Egypt thousands of years ago. Back then, Egyptian sorcerers discovered that each human soul on Earth could house a spirit creature, which they referred to as a Ka. These Ka creatures could be magically bound and controlled, which the priests of the pharaoh's court did using the 7 Millennium items to imprison them away within stone ceiling tablets. From there, the spirits could be called forth to do the bidding of whomever summoned them. Flash forward several thousand years, and archaeologist/gamer fop Maximilian Pegasus discovered the archaeological remains of these shadow games, including the Millennium Eye, an arcane totem that could be used to channel the dark power of the games in the modern day. Being the industrious sort, Pegasus used the Eye and his big nerd energy to produce and mass market the Duel Monsters trading card game. The game became a worldwide phenomenon, and soon players all over the world were trading and playing with cards depicting very real creatures and spirits that had been bound and imprisoned centuries before they were born. And this shouldn't be a big deal, right? Art imitating life is nothing new, and who cares if the cards depict ancient spirits that are long gone and haven't walked the earth in a few millennia? But, as we all know, those spirits are far from gone. Despite most onlookers believing that duelists play using little more than lifelike holograms, the monster spirits in a shadow game are the physical manifestations of those monsters that Egyptian priests bound in stone before the Common Era. But where did newer cards come from? Assuming that the 1,424 cards released during the Duel Monsters era of the show were all derived from Egyptian monsters, spells, and rituals, how did the world go on to create newer monsters and even newer summoning methods? After all, Pegasus lost the Millennium Eye at the end of the Duelist Kingdom arc, and in the manga, he lost his life right alongside it, meaning that his Industrial Illusions Corporation couldn't have been manufacturing cards the same way as before. But we do know that newer cards like the Elemental and Destiny heroes from GX, and all the Synchro, Xyz, Pendulum, and Link cards from 5D's Zexal, Arc 5, and Brains, are still dangerously capable of participating in shadow games or similar style duels. So how's that work? Well, I think that there are a couple of different answers. In the Duel Monsters anime, we know that some cards that have been printed originated in ancient Atlantis, thousands of years before the Egyptians even became aware of the shadow games. Plus, 5Ds shows us that the 5 Signer Dragons and the Crimson Dragon were active in South America around the same time that the pharaoh and his court first started binding monster spirits, to say nothing of the Aesir god cards used by Team Ragnarok, which are clearly inspired by real-world Norse mythology. And of course, Zexal shows us that many of the Xyz monsters that play a role in that show existed before modern times as well. And, shameless self-plug, I did a whole video on the civilization responsible for creating the Sacred Beast cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! GX. Link to that down below in the description. But even if we know where certain spirits like the Sacred Beasts or the Signer Dragons originated, that doesn't tell us how they were turned into trading cards without something like the Millennium items to pull the spirits from a tablet or summon it from another dimension. And where do decidedly not ancient monsters like machines and cybers cards even come from? Well, we do know that creating new cards is something of an involved process. During Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, we learned that the Neospacians were created when the Kaiba Corporation put them on a rocket and accidentally energized them by sending them into Neospace. Later in that same show, Aster Phoenix and his manager discuss how much money went into the research and development process to create the final Destiny hero card, Destiny End Dragoon. Then, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, the Leo Corporation spends a fortune trying to figure out how to properly develop their own pendulum cards, which we see has some pretty mixed results as their first-generation prototypes glitch out and malfunction during Declan Akiba's duel against Yuya Sakaki. And of course, this channel's already done a whole college class on how Seto, Kaiba, and Yusei Fudo developed Synchro and Xyz cards respectively. Link to those down in the description as well. And that's my last plug for this video, I promise. But what are these companies researching and developing? What is the actual process for creating a new Duel Monster spirit? Well, I think our biggest clues come from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's Arc 5 and Vrains. As we've discussed on this channel many times, cards are just forms of energy that are expressed in different ways. Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds converts synchro summoning energy into electricity using the momentum system. The Leo Corporation in Arc 5 plays Big Brother and tracks duelists by monitoring the standard fusion, synchro, Xyz, and pendulum energy that their duel discs generate when dueling. This indicates that the power of the Shadow games, what we'd call magic, is a measurable and quantifiable phenomenon. Then, in Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains, Playmaker is able to generate new cards inside the Link Vrains simulation by using his AI partner, I, to perform an ability known as Storm Access. Essentially, the simulation is full of these roaming tornadoes of discarded computer data, and by working with an artificial intelligence unit, Playmaker harnesses this discarded data and cobbles it together into a brand new, never-before-seen monster. The Storm Access ability suggests that Duel Monsters cards are, at their core, computer programs, compiled data packages that perform specific functions within a compatible system. In essence, they're nothing more than a series of ones and zeros that need to be energized to be brought to life. And we see this throughout the franchise. From as early as Duel Monsters, we see that cards have to interface with electronic devices in order to work. We see circuits light up when the earliest duel arenas read a card that's just been played. And that would suggest that in Yu-Gi-Oh!, ephemeral things like souls and monster spirits are capable of being digitized. How else would a non-corporeal being like the Spirit of the Millennium Puzzle be able to enter virtual reality on not one, but two separate occasions? Pegasus was using the Millennium Eye to convert magic into digital information. And if you don't believe me, just look at the show's second episode. He sends Yugi a VHS tape, an analog data storage device that's used to play back digital content. But as we all know, the tape contains a powerful avatar of Pegasus himself, one that can think and reason and interact with the outside world. But why a videotape? Why not some other object that we'd think of as being more magical, like a mirror or a special card or something like that? Because a videotape stores digital information. Converting digital information into an analog format like a tape has been a practice since the 1950s, and today, one of the most reliable forms of storage for digital data is converting it into long-lasting tape-based cartridges. This is because the data is inert, not requiring any electronic storage components that could fail or short-circuit. The tape is harmless when it's being transported in the mail, and even when Yugi takes it out of the box, but as soon as it's inserted into a VCR, that's what a VHS player was called in the 90s for all of my younger viewers, the heads on the machine begin to play back the digital information stored on the magnetic tape inside of the cassette, activating the curse that Pegasus laid on the tape with his Millennium Eye. But analog storage can't be directly edited or manipulated, short of simply overwriting it. The real magic, pun only sort of intended, happens when the data is converted to fully digital storage. Then it exists as a duplicatable and, more importantly, editable file. For example, take a monster like the Dark Magician, draw it out of its stone tablet and convert it into ones and zeros. Now you can store that data on a magnetic strip or a chip embedded inside of a playing card, the same way that data is stored on a credit card. And boom, Yugi now has his iconic ace monster. But you can also reverse engineer that computer code. Figure out what parts of it account for various aspects of the Dark Magician, and then you have the ability to edit that monster. Simple edits might be nothing more than a reskin, changing up the design and giving it a slightly different appearance, like Arcana's Red Dark Magician. Fundamentally, it's the same monster, but with a visual overhaul. But of course, there's so much more potential for what they could do with this sort of technology. You could segment off individual parts of the data, giving us cards like Magician's Robe, Magician's Rod, and Magician's Souls. Once Pegasus converted the hundreds of monsters in Egyptian tablets and all the spells that his Millennium Eye could perform into a digital format, his computer engineers would have had a tremendous amount of data to study. By sifting that data, it would be possible to rearrange it or expand on it in order to create entirely new effects and abilities. You could take that Dark Magician and modify it by using data derived from different cards until you have a full-on retrain like the Dark Magician, Magician of Black Magic, or combine its data with another monster until you have a modern fusion like the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. The thousands of monster spirits, spells, and traps that were developed in the modern day are just new computer programs, iterated and derived from all those that originated in ancient times. And while their developers only ever meant for them to act as NPCs in a holographic video game system, the same shadow magic that gave their forebearers life in the past is just as capable of activating the programs contained within a new card. So when a character like Jaden Yuki uses his elemental heroes in a Duel of Darkness, those heroes suddenly become more than just programs, a new form of artificial intelligence, no longer animated by technology, but instead by magic. But really, What is magic if not an advanced form of technology? In Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, the solid vision technology that Seto Kaiba originally developed back in Duel Monsters has evolved to the point where professional duelists utilize the Arc system to deploy solid vision with mass holograms. The technology has gotten so good that, like a shadow game, the monsters actually manifest on the field and can physically interact with the players, to the point that Yuya Sakaki routinely rides atop his monsters when they go into battle. As Duel Monsters technology progressed, it became indistinguishable to the shadow games themselves, to the point that artificially created monsters were able to merge with a natural-born human being in order to create a monstrosity that brought about the end of the world, just as the Pharaoh had feared thousands of years before. Thus, it stands to reason that the shadow games and Duel Monsters act as proof of science fiction author and futurist Arthur C. Clarke's third law, that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. But what do you think about how the world went on creating cards without the Millennium items? Is this really how they did it, or is there some other form of magic or technology behind it? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, and if you haven't already, hit the subscribe bell thing so I don't feel so alone when I go to sleep tonight. I've got another theory that I'm cooking up on the origins of pendulum summoning, so I need to get back to the editor's cave to work on that, but I will catch you in the next video. Bye!